Hi friends, welcome back. Today we are going to move on to the next letter of the alphabet, which is the letter N. We are going to be doing two different projects today. You can either do the first project or the second project, or you can do like I'm doing and do both projects together. But I am going to be doing both of them on my piece of paper so that you guys can see how it's done. The materials you need for the first project is your piece of paper. You're going to need some paint, something to write with, something to paint with. You're going to need some liquid glue, and you're going to need some dry, straight out of the box, hard pasta noodles. These ones are bow ties. I like these because they're very cool. However, you can use whatever you have at home. I do recommend you using ones that are individual instead of spaghetti noodles or angel hair or fettuccine. Do something that's a little more creative like rigatoni, penne, or I have bow ties. You can also use macaroni noodles. That works totally fine. So the first thing we're going to do is draw the letter N. You need something to write with. In the middle of the paper, we are going to do two straight lines side by side, but not too close to each other. Just like we did with our letter M. Okay? Two lines from the top to the bottom, side by side. Next, we are going to take this line here and make a diagonal down and connect it to the bottom of this line. One big swoop. And you have the letter N. Nice, big, capital N. So now that we're all done with that, make sure you have something to clean your hands with because they're going to get messy today. I have my wipes ready. The first step is you're going to take your glue and you're going to put one big dot on your paper, about the size of a pea. Step 2, you're going to take your noodle and you're going to take one of your paint brushes and you are going to paint one side of the noodle. I recommend doing a fast drying paint. Mom and Dad, I would use acrylic paints instead of washable paints. However, you can use the washable paints. It just might take a little bit longer to dry. So now I have a nice bright orange noodle. You are going to stick it on that glue spot, dry side down, and press it on there. So you can see I have now pressed my noodle onto the paper. So now I'm going to continue doing that with a couple more noodles, and then we will move on to project number 2. So with this project, you can do however many noodles you would like. You can do many different types of dry noodles. This is a very good sensory project for kids to do at home. I do recommend using smaller brushes if you have smaller noodles versus really big brushes. Some parents let their kids just dip the noodle in a paint. I don't particularly like to do that only because it makes it really hard to get the noodle back out of the paint. But if you plan on letting them dry, then that shouldn't be a problem. Now I have a nice green noodle. I'm going to stick that one onto my paper. N is for noodle. Again, my fingers are getting messy, so I'm going to wipe them off so that they're clean again. take your glue, make a dot, then take your noodle and your paintbrush, paint, and then press onto the paper. Make sure you keep your steps in order so that it's so much easier for you to do. It's really hard to take the glue with one hand and squeeze it on there while you're trying to hold a wet noodle. Okay, now I have a blue noodle, and I'm going to press that one onto my paper very carefully, and I'm going to let it dry. Once your noodle is on the paper, please make sure that you don't try to touch your paper again. You need to let those noodles dry really, really good on there before you can go ahead and put this up on the wall. Okay, so I'm going to do mine a little bit faster. You can work at your own pace at home. I'm going to do it double time so that the video goes a lot quicker for you guys. I'm not going to be as nice with my painting as I'm sure you will. However, it's your project. Do whatever you want to do, guys. One. Got 2 more noodles to go. See, I'm painting. Yes, I am painting on my fingers a little bit, and that's okay. And let's do one more blue one. Again, cleaning my fingers because they got all messy. I'm being very careful not to touch the wet paint once it's already on there. I want it to dry the way that I put it on, and if I go ahead and press on it too hard, that paint is all going to come off on my fingers instead of staying on the noodle. Okay, and as you can see, I now have 6 noodles glued onto my paper. So you can do that for this project. You can also do a string art noodle design, which I'm going to show you next. The materials you need for that project are your white piece of paper. You also need your tray of paints. You're going to need a pair of scissors, and you're going to need some yarn. So once you already draw your letter N, you're going to take your pieces of yarn and cut a couple different strands, only about this big, which is about the size of a headband for me. Using my scissors, I am going to cut those strings apart. Now I have 3 different colored paints, so I need 3 strings. 1, 2, 3 strings. Now each color is going to get its own string. 1 and 2 and 3. The blue one's a little bit shorter, but that's okay. Using my paintbrush, I am going to go ahead and swirl that string into the paint really, really good so that it is all nice and goopy wet. However, I'm going to leave the end sticking out of the paint. Clean off my brush so that it's clean again, and do the same thing with the rest of the colors. I really want to soak that string into the paint so that I can press it onto my paper the right way. Okay, 2, and 1 more to go. Tap, 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 get the string all covered with the paint, except for one end, which I'm going to hold with my fingers. And now they are all soaked into the paint. Now to do this part of the project, you are going to take your string very carefully. See if I can tilt this down so you can watch what I am doing. Okay, so now I am very carefully going to set this string around those other noodles. However, if you aren't doing the other noodle project, you can do just the string art. Now I'm going to tap, tap, tap very gently. I'm not pushing too hard. My fingers are messy, so I'm going to clean them off. And I'm going to lift the string up. Perfect. And I'm going to do it one more time somewhere else. Again, I have to do it around the noodles that I already glued on there. If you plan on doing one project and then the other, that is totally okay. If you just want to do one or the other, that's okay too. I am doing both at the same time, which is a little tricky. So now that I'm all done with the green, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with my next color, which I'm going to do orange. I'm going to wrap it around. And lift it up. And then I'm going to wrap it around again. Wherever the string lands is where I'm going to leave it. And lift it up. Again, messy fingers, make sure you clean those. And let's do one more color. We have blue. And I'm going to set the blue down. And I'm going to wrap it around, being very careful. Lift it up. And again, wrap it around. Place it where I want it to go. And lift it up. Clean my fingers so that they're nice and clean. And presto, you have a very colorful, creative noodle art project. Again, these are two different projects. You don't have to do both. You can do one or the other. You can do the string noodles with paint, or you can do the painting of the noodles and gluing onto the paper. I would say that for my preschool, I would do the painted noodle project, and for pre-K and up, I would do the string art noodle project. But again, it's up to you. You can use whatever colors you want. You can get very creative with this at home. You can get very messy. So I hope you guys have a lot of fun with it. And tune in next time for our next video, which is the letter O. Bye, guys.